Hi friends, in Planet Earth Dating, it's Tuesday, January 28th, 2020. In both the Lynn Life and the Jamie Body Mind, the authorized souls remain only child souls from the deeper, denser dimensions, and all other souls from all other dimensions, as long as the souls are already living by the many rules already given to the search for truth community by wiser minds above all of us. And those rules include acknowledging reality regardless of the convenience or inconvenience of that reality.
That's right.
The rules also include focusing on what matters most, focusing on our soul plans, our assignments, and the soul plans given to the Search for Truth community basically are to be effective interdimensional portals, hold space for true divine godly presences, higher vibration presences, to come into the depths and create a world that works, to manifest the divine plan. That was how it was said for decades. Manifest the divine plan. Somebody's talking kind of like a historian, and they're saying, and what we found to our shock and dismay is that the divine plan no longer dealt with certain inconvenient realities that had accumulated by divinity standards, accumulated in a very short time.
That's right.
In the last 100 years. Just a whole series of ugly choices have been made by humanity that have caused this situation on Earth to become really unworkable, and that right now we are headed directly for a disaster. Like literally all life on Earth, actually all life on Earth is threatened, and this is mainstream scientific consensus. This isn't wacky, woo-woo, freaky people huddled over Ouija boards. This is what the scientists are saying, and we really need to listen up and change. In addition, somebody's saying, in addition, there's this big deadline that was issued back in 2017.
Yeah, that's right.
And the deadline is February 2nd, 2020, which is less than a week away. And by the time this airs, it will have already occurred.
Oh, yeah.
But we do acknowledge that all time is really now, and that it is possible to change things that happened in the past. And so it doesn't matter that you're watching this after the deadline. You can intend to correct the omissions and move forward. And somebody else is saying, well, if we remember that this deadline is kind of like a midterm, then if you blow the midterm exam, just kick it into gear and ace the final and you'll be okay.
That's right.
And that this is a midterm moment in general. This February 2nd, 2020 deadline, and it's a midterm moment for everybody in all dimensions, at least inside the contaminated zone and those affiliated with the contaminated zone.
That's what they're saying.
That's what those angels and godly presences responsible for, maybe the whole contaminated zone, including but not limited to Earth. That's what they're saying.
That's possible.
And maybe it's their supervisors who are saying that, because I can feel the godly presences who are responsible, and they're not happy about it, and they wouldn't have brought this up of their own accord.
Not at all.
So it must be coming in, beaming in from higher up than they are.
Oh, that's true.
How may we be of service to meet the deadline fast approaching, the deadline of 2020-0202? How may we be of service to meet the 2020-0202 deadline? And again, the pencil point keeps circling around to the dreaming of the most recent overnight, and there were two facets of dreaming. In that host life, the dreamers were attempting to restore their energy alignment by falling asleep, which used to work in the era of upward flow. When we would fall asleep, we would release our grasping, the energy channels would kind of blow back up to our guardian angels, and when we awakened, our energy alignment would be improved. It was one of the tricks of the trade for energy healers. It's like, if you've really messed up and your energy body is just a disaster, take a quick nap. You'll feel better when you wake up.
That's right.
And the dreamers last night were attempting to restore their energy alignment, but there's no upward flow.
That's
and so that
right.
trick doesn't work. And so our possibly these two host lives, how we can be of service in meeting the deadline is holding fast to some realities that we know absolutely have got to be addressed. Somebody's asking, how do we know they have to be addressed? Because of all the experiments that angels and godly presences have been carrying out through these host lives for the past maybe 5, 6, 7 years, since 2013. So that it's 7 years and longer, like really it's 30 years.
Exactly.
30 years of experimentation, but particularly the last 7 years.
That's right.
We know this upward flow is completely stopped, and so the idea of a plan that says, and when everybody goes to sleep, their energy channels will blow back up again, and then we'll be able to get through to them. That's a nonsense plan. That's wishful thinking. So we've really got to get through to whoever's making the plans. It has got to include the reality of absolutely no upward flow. And the dreaming in this past week that comes through this body, they test it over and over again, kind of like, there's got to be upward flow. What do you mean there's no upward flow? And they test it and there's none, like not a single bubble, not a ripple, nothing. It's like the Yellowstone mud pots have shut down and all there is mud.
Yes.
There's no upward flow. So just, you guys, can you get that? There's no upward flow. And to base a plan in the reality of no upward flow that still stops the destruction in a fair and just way.
Exactly.
Please may we have a divine plan based in reality that includes the reality of absolutely no upward flow that stops the destruction in a fair and just way. And we're handing up grace we've been saving, and in addition we do offer up the sacrifices of all 4 of the major divine presences from planet Earth, who we have personally observed sacrificing themselves to manifest the divine plan. And we're aware that host lives don't have legal standing under divine law, but these are the 4 ranking divinities of planet Earth, and they all sacrifice themselves, and they proved that the plan didn't work. They sacrificed themselves attempting to manifest the divine plan. It didn't work. So with that reality and this grace we've been saving in the back room, please may we have a divine plan that includes the reality of no upward flow and all other realities also, a divine plan based in reality to stop the destruction in a fair and just way.
Someone in that room of supervisors for the godly presences responsible for the contaminated zone is talking about oppositional defiant disorder. And they're talking about how that's also not being taken into account and how that also is a crucial component.
Yes, and they're talking particularly about oppositional defiant disorder to what the situation actually calls for.
That's it.
And how dysfunctional that is, and how that's
the word.
That's a real problem. And so now how are we going to deal with that oppositional defiant disorder? And another voice is saying, and it might be Saul, because he's saying with a very calm, but I'm not backing down kind of tone, is we've got this proposal on the table to implement instant karma for the bad tail of the bell curve of karma, for the worst of the worst, for those who are pulling the vessel most directly in the direction of destruction. Implement instant karma for them as is already occurring for the best of the best who are already requesting their instant karma. Simply implement instant karma for the bad tail of the bell curve of karma, and in such a way provide guidance to the masses, balance the bell curve of karma, and presumably that would take a bite out of this oppositional defiant disorder that is now rampant. He says rampant throughout the contaminated zone. And he's got that I'm not backing down kind of bit in the teeth feeling that we see heroes often have.
That's true.
what has worked on other planets with this level of oppositional defiant disorder to what the situation actually calls for, and this level of destruction to stop the destruction in a fair and just way. The only examples have the instant karma. That's what Saul is showing. It's like a sifting device. Like when they used to pan for gold and they would pour dirt in and the nuggets would rise to the top.
Exactly.
It's that same thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. But now, how may we be of service to implement instant karma for the bad tail of the bell curve of karma in such a way as to provide guidance to the masses? And they're talking about economics and fluctuations.
Yes, they
and
are.
How, and I think I can follow what they're saying. They're talking about how the same people who are advocating continuing the destructive ways that are actually literally scientifically proven to destroy all life on Earth, that those same presences have been involved in removing the restrictions that have been placed to minimize economic fluctuation. And this body mind, by the way, had 5 economics classes in college, 5 college level economics classes.
That's
so we're
true.
very comfortable with economics discussions.
That's true.
It's actually true that the economic cycles, we can have a boom and bust cycle, and everybody loves the booms and everybody hates the busts. And
That's
so
true.
over the last 100 years, there's been kind of like global consensus to minimize the boom and bust cycles and try for very slow, steady growth. Minimize the boom and bust cycles, very slow, steady growth. And a lot of restrictions have been put into place in the global economy to minimize the boom and bust cycles.
That's right.
And now we have some people who either know what they're doing or don't know what they're doing, and neither way is very good, who are removing the restrictions that have prevented the boom and bust cycles. And what we're experiencing is the boom cycle, and people who are uneducated and don't know about economics think, oh, this is really great. These people really know how to pump the economy. But all that's happening is we're in the boom cycle, and what's coming is the bust cycle, and nobody ever likes the bust cycle. That's the Great Depression in the United States was a good example of the bust cycle. It's by far not the only one. What is the point? And so the point is short-sighted thinking is rampant, and Awo Ra used to say, if we could only get people to think long-term, they would do the right thing out of their own selfish best interests. And what we have now is an increase of short-term thinking, super short-term thinking. Now what? Now what? How can we be of service to meet the deadline that's really in something like 5 days? It's really in a very short time. How can we be of service to meet the deadline? The holdup is this, somebody is trying to turn in their paper, but the paper is not based in reality and doesn't stop the destruction in a fair and just way. And it's kind of like trying to fit a geometric object through a hole that is a different shape of the object.
Yeah.
And all they have to do is base it in reality and have the destruction stopped in a fair and just way. That restriction in a fair and just way means you can't just let the bullies squash the gentler societies. Like, what about the worms and the koala bears?
That's right.
And the toads. Toads are so gentle and so necessary, and if you start to observe toads, you'll see they're not stupid at all.
That's true.
And what about toads? Not to mention trees. Sorry.
That's true. I don't feel anybody upstairs who has a plan ready to submit that has both stopping the destruction in a fair and just way and based in reality.
There are some that are based in what they say is reality, but it doesn't seem like reality.
I feel those.
And there are some that stop the destruction gently.
And I feel those.
And they really are, but they're not based in reality.
No, not at all.
Some voice is saying, well, you're going to have to choose. Which do you want? Do you want it to be based in reality or fair and just way of stopping the destruction? Which do you want?
And they're saying it kind of like these bodies are the ones making up the restrictions.
Let's just live stream higher. Friends, this is some grace we've been saving in the back room, and we're fully aware that host lives do not have legal standing under divine law.
That's true.
But what about the souls who have sacrificed themselves to manifest the divine plan? Thereby, and like really, they pushed it until they themselves were dead or gone.
That's right.
And that's as far as you can push it. Like you they died trying. They died trying to manifest the divine plan, and thereby proved that it was impossible to do it. And these were the 4 ranking divinities of planet Earth. So we think it can't be done. The first one did it first, but then others followed in his stead. And these divinities are known by so many different names under so many religious traditions that just pretty much every divine presence that you can think of in any religious tradition,
I think that's true,
of any standing and significance, has tried. And it didn't work. And that means we need a new plan that's based in reality. And if we're not going to stop the destruction in a fair and just way, then can we please have a date, just for planning purposes, of when are you going to stop siding with bullies by not stopping the bullies? Just for planning purposes, can we have a date? And it's not just bullies, it's also liars, when
That's
people are
true.
saying untruths and nobody else is standing up and saying, that's not true. And they're not struck down by divinity. Doesn't that mean divinity is, at least in the short run, siding with liars and bullies, and obviously in the long run, boom! The smackdown comes, but that's too delayed to be providing guidance to the masses. Somebody asked why that is. I don't know. I guess people are stupid is all I can tell. People are stupid.
That's true. They don't make the connections.
They don't connect the dots. Wishful thinking is profound. For whom is the message? Why do you ask? And we don't know who said people are stupid. It's one of those divine presences up there is saying people are stupid. Arrogant and foolish.
Yeah, that's right.
It might have been arrogant and foolish, which combines to form stupidity.
That's right.
Because somebody's making the detangling motion and they're saying, well, what really does it mean to be stupid? It's like, it's the Shakespeare quote of what's in a name.
Yeah.
Yeah, what's in a name. So what does the name of stupid consist of? Foolishness and arrogance. And they're pulling it apart. And it's foolishness, a big pot of foolishness, and a decent measure of arrogance.
That's true.
And they come together to form a lovely stew of stupidity.
That's true.
And so if we can...
A stupidity.
Oh, we missed it. A stupidity. A stew of stupidity. So if we can simply look at reality as it actually is and let go of our arrogant thinking that we're better than anybody else, then everything will go better in the long run. And again, they're talking about the boom and bust cycles.
That's right.
And how unpleasant the bust part of the cycle is.
That's right.
Please, may we have a divine plan that includes the realities of oppositional defiant disorder to what the situation actually calls for, and the reality of absolutely no upward flow. And have a plan that still stops the destruction in a fair and just way. Here's some grace we've been saving.